all of you who are listening and who are watching this presentation. Just a very quick reminder that you can always use, and I do encourage you to use the chat box to share your opinions, concerns, questions, comments, whatever you feel like. Our today's topic is very interesting. Just like we have colors in our life, and without the colors, our life will be really dull and boring. So, same thing happens in the organizational context as well, that without uh, having people of different backgrounds, without having diversity, no organization, no multinational company can even claim that they are on the right track. So, we will be addressing the topic of diversity and inclusion in organizational success today. Uh, in the field of HRM, there are certain trending topics which, over the period of time, find value and interest. So, as I've already mentioned frequently, that in the times of COVID 19, the global pandemic, the concern for employee well being was at the top. Most HR professionals and the organizations were actually working on finding different ways and strategies to improve upon the well being of the employees. Similarly, in this current era, diversity and inclusion is another interesting and important topic for the field of HR, particularly having a specific interest for HR professionals, as uh, this interesting concept, it brings opportunities as well as challenges for them to manage. Now, the top companies in the world, they would want to be recognized as organizations which give due value and importance to not only diversity, but having an environment, a culture in which everybody feels included. So today we will be talking about what diversity and inclusion is, how this benefits the organizations. We will be going through some real life examples of the best practices of companies as well. And I would always love to hear your comments, your opinions, and your suggestions through the chat box. And at the end, we will be having one on one questions as well. All right. So, moving forward, let us start by introducing diversity and inclusion. Just to get an idea what it is. The presence of differences within a given setting, including race, gender, sexual orientation, cultural background, etc. It's first of all, we need to understand that all humans are unique. I hope that you find yourself as a unique individual, having unique set of characteristics. And obviously, you belong to a certain region, you belong to a certain area. That is your geographical representation. You belong to a certain race. You have a specific gender. You belong to a specific age group. And how you perceive life and how you see life and how you work on your different ideas, that also comprise your uniqueness as an individual. Now, if you are able to work in an organization, would you just think about this question, that if you are working as a manager or as an individual within the organization, where at your peer level there are 40 other people, for example, working with you. So would you want your organization to see you as a 40th employee, as a 40th manager, or would you want yourself to be recognized as an individual who is a bit unique, a bit different, a bit special than all the other 39, 40 people working? Although they are working in the same capacity at same level, but it is understood that you would want to be recognized as an individual who believes that he or she has different set of values, different ideas, thoughts, because you belong to a certain specific different region. That is the main crux and idea of diversity and inclusion, that the organization would want to recognize its individual, its employees as special, as unique, and would want to include all of them in terms of making sure that the organization prospers and grows collectively. Now, Now, what does inclusion mean? Creating an environment where diverse individuals they feel valued, respected, and are given equal opportunities to succeed. Now, saying this is very easy, but in organization, actually implementing it and making sure that this thing happens is like a huge challenge, because when the organizations they prefer people coming from different backgrounds, then obviously that difference of background, that difference of age, that difference of all the characteristics mentioned earlier, it is going to bring a challenge for the organization as well. If an organization has 1,000 employees working in one country, how difficult and challenging would it be to focus on all those individuals? All the organizations would want to go for an organizational structure where there are departments, where there are segments, clusters, and they would want to focus on dealing with set of people rather than dealing with individuals. Now, this brings another question into our discussion. What do you think? Do you think that the organizations should be having some focus and emphasis on individual thoughts, or should they be focusing more on the departments, groups, or clusters? By having a response on this question, we'll tell you that whether you prefer diversity and inclusion or not, or are you able to understand this concept or not. The companies working in different geographical regions of the world, like multinational companies, which are working not only in US, which are not working not only in Asia or in one continent, they are spread all over the world. Obviously, they would be having employees and people coming from all over the world and working there. Now, this in itself is a huge challenge, because when people come with a personality, though that personality comprises of their set of core values, the implication of their individual culture, the implication of their mindset, their brought up, and their geographical association as well. Now, the companies initially they saw that as a challenge. Initially it was a huge challenge for the companies, and some organizations even took diversity as a threat rather than an opportunity. But in the field of HR, and since the evolution of this field, the employees, the organizational managers or the organizational decision makers, they believe that when people from different backgrounds, from different set of skills, they come together and work in an environment which is which supports inclusion, which supports that everybody should be given due value, due respect, and an equal opportunity. Only then they are able to commit that they have an environment that supports diversity and inclusion. Now, what is the importance of that in HRM? Diversity and inclusion goes beyond hiring. It influences culture, employee engagement, and retention. Obviously, it's not about just looking out for people who are coming from a different background and just getting them on board. It is about making sure that your organizational culture is going to be impacted by those people. Let's talk about religion for a while. People with different religious backgrounds, with different religious orientations, when they come in the work, obviously they bring a set of challenge to that environment. Uh, the Christmas is about to come next month. For some people for the other religions, Christmas, working in a multinational company, they may not be celebrating Christmas, but since the organization respects and values these holidays, so everybody is going to be a part of that regardless of their individual cultures. Same goes for Muslims as well. This celebrate their month of fasting Ramadan, and then they have their Eid holidays, so the organization would want to facilitate them as well. It is about having an environment, uh, a system in which people, all of them, they are valued, and the HR department makes sure that all of them they contribute in a significant manner towards overall organizational success. All right. So, what is the business case for diversity and inclusion? How does it help? The first thing is that when we are talking about a diverse workplace with inclusion mindset, we understand that it is all about innovation and creativity. Diverse teams bring different perspectives which lead to innovative solutions. When people from different backgrounds they come together, obviously they bring new ideas. Now it is up to the organization to develop an environment, to create an environment where those ideas they do not turn into destructive conflicts. Good companies they always encourage constructive conflicts. Now, what is a constructive conflict? In which people are disagreeing, they are saying that things can be done in a different manner, but the conflict is constructive because it is making the organization better. The organizations or the companies which do not encourage people to criticize their policies, they lack in this area because they are not allowing everybody to speak up and share what he or she thinks. In an ideal world, in a in an organization which is promoting diversity and inclusion, each and every individual will have the right, and not only the right, but will have the platform to share his or her opinions regarding what is going on. We do talk about Google a lot, and Google claims, the company Google claims that it has a very diverse working environment, and truly so because it is spread all over the world. So they just focus on managing talent rather than focusing on that the people are coming from which background. Because at the end of the day, their work is related to obviously innovation and creativity in the field of technology, in the field of computers. So they would want to have people who come with diverse ideas, regardless of their individual backgrounds. What other valuable, significant contribution does diversity and inclusion make? It improves employee engagement. As discussed in the previous lecture as well that we had a couple of days ago, that it is the responsibility of HR department to make sure that the employees they feel comfortable, they feel happy, they feel satisfied, they feel committed to their work. It is the obligation of the HR department to make sure that all these things happen. Now, when there is an inclusive environment in which everybody is free to share and speak up, it will obviously lead to job satisfaction. And the people who are, when they are satisfied with their jobs, obviously they don't think about quitting. Employee engagement is one of the major targets of any HR department. I mean, regardless of what they are doing, but their target would be to make sure that all the employees they feel engaged in the work. And what does engagement mean? That the employees are willing to do work, they are willing to take up new challenges, they are willing to go above and beyond for the organization without any extrinsic motivation coming their way. All right. So the employees they feel by themselves that they have to participate, they have to make sure. I mean, they actually care about the organization because the organization is caring about them. And similarly, it leads towards a positive employer brand. We did talk about employer branding a few days back in much detail. So diversity and inclusion, it creates a very positive image and impression among the labor market. Belonging to a certain, let me share an example for you. In our country, in Pakistan, we have top two universities. Uh, for an example, I will share University A and University B without taking the names, obviously. And then there are like hundreds of other universities in Pakistan, and they are creating graduates on a biannual basis. I mean, all universities have 2 semesters in 1 year. So, like, after each semester, there are people who are graduating and who are going into the market. When I graduated back in 2003, so when I was applying for certain jobs online, there was a very unethical practice going on in terms of the organizations. Now, what they did was that in their job advertisement, they mentioned all the things that we need a business graduate, he or she should be having an MBA degree, he or she should be having experience of 6 months or so because we are looking for entry level job. And at the end of that job advertisement, they used to write that only students from University A and B would be considered for this position. I did mention that the University A and University B, I'm just hiding their names. These were the top two universities in the country. So, do you think it was ethical for the organizations who were posting their jobs in the newspapers to share that we would only encourage applicants coming from University A or University B? The rest of the university students need not to apply. Do you think there is something wrong with that? If you have any opinion, please use the chat box and share. Have you been able to understand my question? Hopefully, yes. So you can actually nod your head. If you have understood my question, you can nod your head like this. Wonderful. So I would love to hear your answer. I mean, many heads nodding right now. So I would love to see an answer. Do you think it was ethical for that organization to share in their job advertisement that we would be encouraging applicants from University A and University B only? The rest of the applicants need not to apply. Do you think there is something wrong with this? What is it? If there is something wrong with it, can you please share in the chat box what is wrong? I'm waiting. I'll wait for like 20 seconds and then we will.
It is your time, ladies and gentlemen, to make your comments as invited by Professor Umar Hassan. Roseman Sarr says that it leads to discrimination. If what Jira believe it's discriminatory, discrimination also in the perspective of Annalena Costa. Everybody kind of abounds in the same line of thought.
Very good. Dr. Valkin, I'm receiving direct messages, so I'm not able to see the overall chat. But anyways, I mean, you are right that the responses largely, they do understand uh, that the advertisement lacked diversity and inclusion principles. All right, very obvious. And it was discrimination. Yeah, this discrimination, although it was like happening 20 years back, and now the companies cannot even think of doing something like that because they will be challenged in the court, and it would become a huge issue for them in terms of not only diversity and inclusion, but in terms of equal employment opportunity law as well. There is a law in the countries named as EEO law, which means equal employment opportunity. So it is an obligation on the organizations to make sure that they provide an equal opportunity to all the applicants who are applying. So when a company promotes and encourages that no matter where you are, whether you're living in Pakistan, whether you're living in Nigeria, whether you're living in any country, you are eligible to apply for that position. So what does it show? It shows that the employer is primarily committed towards attracting diversity and inclusion, and it builds their employer brand as well, their image as well. Now most companies, they are actually doing it. And what is the impact on performance? I mean, studies being currently conducted, they show that diverse companies perform better in terms of return on investment, and they do well in terms of financial gains. The companies who have taken diversity and inclusion as a core value, as a core principle, they are performing well in terms of their profit as well. Uh, a really good drawing happening on the screen, but I would encourage that if you please avoid that. All right. So types of diversity in the workplace. Let us go quickly through this, that on what basis do we understand diversity? One is the obvious demographic diversity, in which uh, we categorize our employees based on gender, their ethnic background, their age, and their physical ability. Pretty obvious. Another one is experiential diversity. That is something really interesting and important. Like people, or I mean, you can be hiring from one city even, and still your workplace would be very diverse. It's not really important that people, they need to come from different geographical locations to create a diverse workplace. If the company believes that people coming from even a same university, even if they have a difference in their educational degrees, in their skill set, and in their personal experience, they can also be considered as a diverse workforce, a diverse workplace. But obviously, in multinational, since the name is multinational, it means it needs to have people coming from different multi nations. Another one is cognitive diversity. I mean, this is really something very interesting, and I think that all of you should remind yourself, refresh your mind over this, that the difference in your thinking style, the difference in your problem solving, and the difference in your perspective will give you an idea that you are a unique individual, you are a different individual. So that gives you cognitive diversity. Regardless of, I mean, even in one family, all the children are cognitively diverse because they have their own thinking patterns, their own problem solving approach. It is always good to conduct a personal SWOT analysis. You should always do that. Uh, Personal SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That analysis, it gives you an idea that how you are supposed, I mean, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what career prospects or what different opportunities or maybe threats are coming your way. So what are the challenges that are being faced by the organizations in terms of diversity and inclusion? I mean, there is something called as unconscious bias, a prejudice that affects decision making in hiring, promotion, and everyday interaction. Have you ever encountered this thing that you are more comfortable if you are working in a diverse environment and you feel more comfortable working with somebody who is of your same gender, who is of your same age, or who is also coming from the same geographic background? That is a kind of a bias, and you are doing it unconsciously because obviously you would not want to do it consciously because that will be violating the diversity and inclusion rules, and that can create some legal issues for you as well within the workplace, some ethical issues as well. But usually, as a human, we do feel comfortable with people who come from similar backgrounds, people who are from even similar countries when it comes to feeling more comfortable. This is one thing that the organizations they tend to discourage because in this way you will be facing an unconscious bias that may affect the application or importance of diversity and inclusion. Stereotyping and microaggression is also a challenge that needs to be addressed in diversity and inclusion because harmful behaviors, these are the harmful behaviors that discourage inclusivity. Now, what is stereotyping? Just quickly going through it. When we start putting people in boxes, I mean, like, if I'm a manager of an organization and if in my past I had a very bad experience with somebody who was from a Middle Eastern background, just giving you an example. So, what I do is that I try to have this idea in mind that all Middle Eastern people who are going to come and work will be allowed and will be like I will be having a conflict with them. That is a kind of an example of stereotyping because you would be putting all the people in a box without even thinking about what they are supposed to do. Similarly, when we talk about genders, there are some characteristics that are aligned with genders, like males are considered to be A, B, C, and these categories, and females are somehow associated with these categories. In a workplace, it doesn't look nice. Uh, in a workplace, it's not a very good approach or a strategy to follow because in this way, you are basically discouraging inclusivity. Now, my question to all of you is, and it's a very tricky question, but directly related to our topic. My question is, who do you think are better leaders, males or females? What do you think about it? Share your answer in the chat box. Who do you think are better leaders? Yeah, which gender do you think has better leadership qualities, males or females? What do you think about it? Use the chat box and write a response, please. Okay.
But dearly on this mayor, of course, I don't know why he added of course.
Yeah, that is
Is
why we need more
discrimination.
trainings on diversity and inclusion. Yeah, I get the point.
That is discrimination. Grace says it depends. Columbus, it depends. Eddie, Guandu, Mel, Jima, Mel. Lauren says it depends on the personality. I love that. It depends on the strengths. Uh, I don't think there can be such criteria. Effort Jira. Female, Samuel. So if Samuel were here in the US tomorrow, he would vote for Kamala. We have that determined.
This is a very, very interesting kind of a
It
debate,
is.
obviously, and this surely tells us that somehow unconsciously we are falling for the stereotyping trap because when you look at it, uh, I mean, when we make this opinion up that both the genders are equal and they should have equal employment opportunities, this is the crux of diversity and inclusion that on the basis of gender, you cannot possibly eliminate a job position. For example, for all the males, one of my questions for all the males is that if there is a position in an organization and they state in their job advertisement that only females are encouraged to apply, won't you feel a bit offended or won't you feel that this is a kind of a violation of equal employment opportunity? Same goes. I mean, I'm not talking about specific job positions which only require females or which only require males. I'm talking generally, obviously. So, because you cannot categorize on the basis of gender, and that was my question, that you cannot categorize leadership on the basis of gender. Because if you say that males are better leaders, or if you say that females are better leaders, what are you doing? You are basically stereotyping. And that stereotyping is based on an unconscious bias because this is not the even the true representation of stereotyping, because in stereotyping we believe that a specific group of people is supposed to respond in a specific manner, which in itself is a very wrong approach because it does not allow people to come out of their shells and do better. It is like teaching a class. If you go into a class and if you believe that all of the students are slackers, all of the students they are lazy, they don't want to work, and you just have that thing in mind, how much productive would you be as a teacher? Why not give all of them an equal opportunity to share their ideas, to come up with opinions? All right, now people are agreeing that more both male and female, it all depends on the character. Uh, and some people are saying that yes, the females are going to get married, so they'll probably have some other obligations and so on. I mean, it's a good discussion going on, but always remember that when it comes to generic questions, we are looking for generic answers. We are not thinking about specific cases. Uh, just understand that to understand the logic of a concept, we need to generalize everyone rather than thinking about a specific incident that happened in our past. I know males who have quit their jobs when they were 40. So does that mean that all males are going to, is there a probability or a chance that all males are going to quit their jobs when they are 40? I mean, that even sounds very, um, what can I say, very naive or very stupid, even to mention it. So this means that we need to be very cautious and careful about this thing that opportunities are to be given to everyone, and we cannot just go for things which include issues like stereotyping. Now, there is a hesitant to change, resistance to change. I mean, it's pretty common within the organizations. The employees and leaders may feel threatened by initiatives that challenge the status quo. When the companies who are willing and trying to adapt diversity and inclusion, they do find this challenging thing that people who are already there in working in their positions, they tend to find it very difficult to adapt to new changes. I'll give you an example of our country once again. Back in 1990s, the banking sector in Pakistan was growing a lot. and that was the time when banks were privatized. But in 1990, all the everything was being done on the files manually, because the computers were not very common, and like there were files which needed to be maintained. So all the people working in the banks at that time were like really well acquainted with filing and writing down things, making ledgers and balance sheets and everything else. Since the advent of computer and the internet after 2000, year 2000, things started to change. You know what these banks did? They started encouraging young graduates who are computer literate to come and apply for the jobs, and they asked their previous employees who were more experienced, but the companies, they asked them to leave. Not like leave, they offered them incentive. One of the name of those incentives in Pakistan was golden handshake, like golden handshake. Now, what does it mean? That the company was offering to say bye bye to that individual by offering them a handsome amount of money and asking them to just go away and bye bye, rather than uh, just continue being a burden on the organization. So that golden handshake was a policy which was there to ensure that the status quo is challenged. Otherwise, these people would continue to sit in their positions, and they would obviously not feel very happy when young talent is coming with more computer skills and more computer literacy. So they would not feel really confident and happy to work. And that will obviously go against the concept of diversity and inclusion, and it would not affect productivity in a very positive way. All right, the people who are raising their hands, you have two options. Option number one, you can write your question in the chat box, or option number two, you can wait until the end of the session to ask question. You will have an opportunity to do that. All right. So another challenge of in terms of diversity and inclusion is obviously the lack of training. Without guidance, and employees and leaders may not know how to foster an inclusive culture. I mean, we HR people, we do believe largely in teaching everything, in helping the employees learn new things. So this diversity and inclusion training also benefits the company when it comes to learning about what practices are there and what tailor-made organizational changes can be done. Now, what does HR do in terms of promoting diversity and inclusion? Now, inclusive recruitment practices may include implementing blind recruitment, using diverse hiring panels, and focusing on skill-based assessments. Now, it is giving an idea. If you know about recruitment and selection as a HR function, you would know that most companies, they prefer a very kind of a typical structured kind of hiring process, just to avoid the legal issues. Because when it comes to hiring, if somebody goes in the court and says that the hiring is not being done fairly, so the court may take up that case and it may become an issue for the organization. So they would want to stay as transparent as they can, and one of the ways to achieve transparency is following a structure. But following a structure, it also leads to an issue that is related to promoting diversity and inclusion, because you can't do that while you are following a structure. For example, if a company announces a position for which, for example, for which 5 years experience is needed in a specific position, what if they find an applicant who is much talented and can be a valuable asset for the organization, but does not fulfill the criteria of 5 years experience? So how can the company violate their own hiring strategy and go on and hire that person? I mean, they need to hire him or her. So in order to do that, they would want to have a very flexible recruitment practice, focusing on the element that we need to have more people on board who are willing to share and contribute for the organizational betterment. Now, diversity and inclusion practices and initiatives, policies and initiatives are to be taken up by the HR department, as they need to craft policies that promote equality. I mean, the HR is a department that deals with numerous challenges and Numerous, I would say, interesting scenarios that come up apart from their textbook HR approach, because it's about dealing with humans. So humans are very dynamic. Even if we talk about one uh, concept of harassment, even harassment has so many contexts to it that the harassment prevention entity within the HR department would be coming across so many new examples frequently that they would want to consider those examples, consider those incidents, and formulate new strategies. So, HR is in a position to make new policies and take initiatives that promote equality and focus on anti discrimination guidelines and flexible work arrangements. Similarly, as I've already mentioned, that HR can focus a lot on training and development. And what will they be training the people about? It would be about the cultural competence. I mean, knowing about the other cultures and how they behave and what values they have, because it's really important. Even this sign, at the end of all our sessions when we are saying bye bye to each other, so we usually wave our hands. So I do this usually. This is a thumbs up sign that I do. In some cultures, this is taken as an offensive sign. Some cultures, they take thumbs up as a very offensive uh, sign or a gesture. So from today onwards, I won't be doing thumbs up. I will be doing this. So that this is one thing that I learned from diversity and inclusion today, that in order to make sure that all the people listening and watching, none of them finds this sign offensive. So I will be using this wave of hand. Now, wave of hand is considered equally respectable and equally okay in all the cultures. So, apart from cultural competence, the HR department should also focus on minimizing unconscious bias by frequent activities, which may include informal gatherings, get togethers, outdoor excursions, formal meetings as well, in which people get to know each other. So when they get to know each other, obviously, then the element of biasness is reduced. And then we can go for inclusive leadership, in which the leaders are encouraged, the leaders are told that you need to be engaging and involving more people within your work practice. The HR department can also initiate mentorship programs. Having a mentorship program is really wonderful because all the change can happen from the mentors. The people who already know, the senior people or members of the organization who are quite confident and aware that what is the importance of diversity and inclusion, so they can actually propagate this thing in their organizational environment, and they can and through this the organization can focus on the underrepresented employees within their organization. Still, if you have any question, any opinion, feel free to use the chat box. All right. So the next thing is that building an inclusive culture. What can the organization do in terms of making sure that they are able to build an inclusive culture? Let us quickly go through these points since we have around 15 minutes left before we actually engage into questions. So I'll just speed up a bit. Now, the companies, they need to promote open communication. As I've already mentioned, that hearing from the employees that what they have to speak about, this is something really critical, because only then you, if you give an option of a voice to the employees, only then you will be able to. Now the companies, they need to formulate system, they need to set up systems. They can use intranet, maybe intranet, something that works within the organization where people can actually share their opinions and concerns and questions and talk about things. uh, the company can also introduce some kind of formal, informal activities in which people are given this freedom or given this opportunity to share. Then there is something called as employee resource groups. Supporting affinity groups where employees can connect, share experiences, and influence workplace policies. Uh, I hope that you guys may have heard about Facebook at work. Um, if you use Facebook, you know how it works. So Facebook at work is an actual software that is given to the organization. It is like Facebook, but it has all its employees over there, and obviously no outsider can be a part of that group. So when somebody does something really wonderful, he or she is shared just like on Facebook, and then the people, they can give a thumbs up, they can share their hearts, and they can actually share their feedback and comments regarding that achievement. Now, these kind of groups, they give an opportunity for everybody to be a part of something collective. Organizations should also celebrate diversity, as I've already mentioned, that events like Christmas, events like Eid, like Diwali. Now, these three events are religious events from three different backgrounds. Can you name any wonderful event from your culture, from where you are? So I would love to hear that in the chat box. You can continue to share because I would want to know about your culture, and I would want to know about your public holiday and your, so the next time I give the example of your culture also. And organizations need to have feedback mechanisms as well. They can take surveys from the employees, and they can make sure that how much of their diversity and inclusion practices are working. Now, how can we actually measure diversity and inclusion? As I did mention in the previous session as well, that most of the activities of HR are qualitative in nature, not quantitative. They are qualitative in nature, so sometimes it becomes really difficult to measure qualitative interventions, but still the organization can use metrics for diversity. They can focus on gender and ethnicity ratios, diversity at various leadership levels, and diversity in hiring and promotions. What they can do is the HR department can generate a report either after 6 months or 1 year, in which they do some kind of tabulation and do some kind of data analysis to find out that how successful they were in terms of making sure that diversity and inclusion was practiced in its true sense. Similarly, in employee engage, I mean, if you take a survey from the employees and you just ask different questions trying to make sure that how engaged they are in their work, or you can just take the data of the employees which left the organization in last year. There is something called as exit interview. When people they leave the organization requests to have an interview with them so that they are able to share what was the reason they left the organization. If reasons are coming like they were not given the freedom to speak, they were not able to share their ideas, or they did not feel included in the organizational practices, so this shows that diversity and inclusion is not working very appropriately. These feedback and surveys and collecting input from the workplace, it can give you a clear idea that how successful your diversity and inclusion initiatives are. Since performance evaluation or performance review is something that is pretty common within all organizations, and HR department basically is responsible for doing that. So performance reviews can give you an idea that how much the people agree and appreciate that there is an inclusive environment in which they are working. So I would like to share. All right, Aisha, can you please share that in Nigeria, what public holiday or what collective holiday that you celebrate from where you are, from Nigeria? All right. So there is another comment I would quickly like to respond. Dear Umar, thank you so much for the presentation. Was the golden handshake based on willingness or volunteer? The example that I gave regarding the bank where golden handshake was there, obviously it was voluntary. It's a very good question. It was voluntary, but it was so lucrative. It was so, I mean, beneficial or so attractive that 90% of the people actually took it. The package was something like that: if you are working in a bank and if you have like 15 years to go in your service before you retire, the bank was willing to offer you that 15 years salary in advance, and they would ask you to quit your job. So people, 90% of the people, they took the handshake, they took the money, and they started their own businesses or started doing something else with their life. So it was a win situation for them. All right. So in terms of diversity and inclusion, Microsoft is one of the leading examples. It's a very obviously you know about it. Microsoft is dedicated to building an inclusive culture and has embedded diversity and inclusion into every level of its business. I mean, that is something really interesting to know that there are multiple functions and activities going on within the organization and embedding diversity and inclusion in everything. There are employee resource groups. Microsoft have 9 employee resource groups, including women, LGBTQ employees, veterans, and these groups provide community support, mentorship, and policy development. I mean, how wonderful it would be that if you're working in an organization and they provide you a support group where you can share your concerns, you share your opinions without being judged or without being uh, even penalized if you want to say something bad about the organization, or if you want to do some constructive criticism, you would not be held accountable for that. Similarly, Microsoft goes for inclusive hiring programs, like focusing on people with disabilities, focusing on people with different backgrounds, trying to, I mean, making sure that autism hiring program is there to accommodate different needs and strengths. Now, what happens when they do it? Improved workplace satisfaction and retention rates among underrepresented groups, high employee engagement in diversity and inclusion activities, contributing to a more innovative and collaborative environment. Now, the initiatives that Microsoft has taken, it has enabled the organization